So, today, I'm hoping you're going to be open-minded because I want to raise awareness to the need for civility in our society and in our world. And I'm hoping you're going to go on this journey with me. And what brought this up was that last week on the way back from here, Melody and I were talking in the car, and I was talking to her about her cousin who was bullied at school by some students and how I felt about that. And I asked her, what does she think leads to these behaviors? And her answer was shocking, like seriously shocking. She said, well, look at the adults in our society. So first, right, mirror on me. Is she talking about me and about Jeffrey? Is she talking about us? And I said, so to make myself feel better, I needed to know where was she coming from. So we kept discussing, and I said, can you give me some ways that you think that is true? And we talked about this list. Adults yelling in stores at other customers or employees. Adults shaking their fist in car windows and getting mad on the highway. Adults fighting at sports events, she said, and especially their own kids' events. Adults throwing childish fits at airports and on airplanes. And things like hearing stories on the news when a lawyer gets out of his car and stabs someone because that someone got in their way. So our conversation led me to do some investigating about how big of a problem is civility beyond my eyes. And I learned that 48.6 Americans are bullied at work. Let's just start there. Then I came upon this study from Michigan, which they believe represents a bigger picture, but they had surveyed 2,400 professional and non-professional staff in the school districts, all sizes, all types, in the state of Michigan. And remember, some of these people are policy setters, are teachers, example setters. And this is what I learned. 27.8% of respondents felt bullied by another adult in their K through 12 workplace. 41% were aware that one or more adults in their building were being bullied. 74% reported being bullied by someone of the same gender. And this one really caught my attention, that adult bullying behaviors are occurring at the same rate as bully behaviors. So for me, the need for us to look into this is far bigger than my conversation with Melody, because the statistics also show that 95% of us believe civility is a serious crisis. And every time something happens in our society or our world, I see, this is my observation, people choosing sides and saying we're all one and talking about us all being one. All being of God, except for that group. All being of God, except for that one person. Oh, we're all one. Well, how will that ever happen when people choose sides? Whether you're choosing sides in your family, choosing sides in your neighborhood, choosing sides in politics, I don't care. choosing sides in a world crisis. It will not help. And I think the path to creating civility has to be focused on uniting and not dividing. Keeping your mouth quiet when you think you want to say something that will break apart humanity. There are many definitions for civility, but the one that I like the most says this. It's by D.S. Leader. It says, civility is about taking care of your needs, others' needs, and the needs of the situation. And every day, whether at home or at work, people are belittled, they're mocked, and they're reminded of their shortcomings. And how many of us sitting here remind everybody of their shortcomings? We're not exempt. Just because we walk in the door here and it says unity and inclusiveness and all these other things that we say, acting it and modeling it is a whole different game. Because you have to have the guts to stand up to other people and ask them if they are dividing or uniting by what they just said. How many people get teased every single day in hurtful ways by adults teasing adults? And everyone wants to take credit for things that work. Nobody wants to take credit for the things that don't work. In fact, it's so much easier to find fault in other people when things don't work. And those who are on the receiving end of these behaviors suffer. And sometimes they suffer in silence. And then when they don't suffer in silence, or they do to the point of wanting retribution, then they do hateful things. Because they have suffered and they can't handle anymore. So the questions I have for us today, all of us, myself included, how might we be contributing to the problem? And what can we or will we do differently? Christine Porath is the author of a book called Mastering Civility in the Workplace. And in her book, she has this incivility test. And while the book targets the workplace, the incivility test is for anyone. And you can tell it by the questions. So we're given a list of questions in this, and then about our behaviors. And then she asks us to rate the behaviors from never doing it to almost always doing it. And there's a whole range in between. But just for today, I'm going to read some of the items on this list and ask you for yourself to just self-reflect and say, never, always, sometimes. Let's just kind of land there. So just listen to this, please. How often do you do any of the following? Forget to say please and thank you. Talk down to others. Pass the blame. Spread rumors. Belittle others non-verbally, such as rolling our eyes, smirking, etc. Show little interest in others' opinions. Insult, interrupt, or judge others. How often do you fail to listen? Speak unkindly of others. Make demeaning or derogatory remarks. Send an email or text when speaking to someone face to face is needed. Now, I found the list pretty interesting. Most of us have an eye roll of some kind to somebody. There's the eye roll, and then there's I'm not really rolling my eyes, but I am rolling my eyes. So the head's nodding. Right? from my perspective, every one of these questions really was asking us, are we lifting people up? Are we keeping them down? Really. That's what, for me, it comes down to. And the craziest thing about this is in this book, she describes 3 simple things we can do. And when you hear the 3 simple things, you're like, that will never change the world. But she said they would. The first one is smiling at other people, not just the people you know. The second one is building relationships with people, not just artificial relationships. And the third one is listening, learning to listen and be a good listener to people who need to be heard. I know these fundamental practices sound simple, but if we were doing them, would we be in the problem we're in? I don't think so. So how many of us could do those simple 3 things and make a difference just in our own little nucleus? When I think about someone who understood the importance of uplifting humanity, I can't help but think about Jesus. All the stories we ever hear tell us that whoever came in his contact felt pretty good when they walked away. There are stories that tell us he was humble. And he never went on the offense. He never felt the need to be aggressive and be on the offense. He was inclusive. He stood up for spiritual versus human truth. He did not try to make himself right. He tried to be an example of a much bigger truth in the universe. He demonstrated unconditional love, acted with grace and honor. And I have not yet, in all my years, read a story about him bullying anybody. But I truly believe the reason he had an impact on this world, and one of many, by the way, I believe had an impact, is that he never saw himself as separate from other people. Whoever was in his presence was part of him. He didn't go around saying, not those people, or no, I don't think so. Every day we are given opportunities to unite or divide. What are we doing in this world that is causing such division? I think in order for us to create a more civil society, we need to be the mirror of divine love for all humanity, not just add to the rhetoric of separation. You know, I hope that isn't mine. It's a real possibility. So look, I know everybody, not to refer to Lisa by any means, but everybody is worried about the Middle East. That's the elephant in the room. That's why I said not you, Lisa. I know everybody is. But I wonder sometimes how many people are operating on facts versus emotion. So I'm going to share a few things, not to make you make a decision, but because I think being educated is important. So the war over a 25-mile piece of land has been going on since 1948. First, the British government had it. Then they handed it to the Egyptians. Then Egypt had it, and then they gave it up. So 1948, 200,000 people lived in this 25-mile space. 1967, another war. 60% of the people living there were refugees. Population grows to 394,000. 1987, First time Palestinian revolt occurs. And a small group of people who had a lot of resentment decided to take action and begin bullying practices. 1993, we think, oh, thank God it's over. This big peace accord is signed. Finally, there'll be peace in this 25-mile piece of land. But no, 7 years later, another uprising, and now Egypt's involved again. 2005, Israel says, we're done. We're walking away. Take it back. 2014, Egypt's back. We're starting to control the Gaza Strip. And now here we are. 2.1 million people live in 25 miles. And just to put this in perspective for you, that's 25,000 people per square mile. And in Tampa, it's 3,362 people per square mile. Are you still surprised there's a war? But here's what I want you to understand. It isn't ours to be judging. I'm not saying it isn't horrific, but it is wrong to choose sides in humanity. And by the way, when we do, we are not helping. If you want to help, truly help, stop talking about it unless you're praying for peace and you're raising those people up, both sides, to see how ridiculous this all sounds over 25 miles of land. How many times have people died there? How many people have struggled over it? How often will this continue? Why do we care anymore about that land? But poverty and resentments have built. And the more that builds when people are crowded and poor and without their needs being met, the more chaos we're going to see. And if we want to help all that way away, I don't see anybody here flying over there to help. If we want to be helpful, start praying and affirming that these people will see the need to stop this ridiculous stuff. But if we think by any chance our comments are going to change 85 years of frustration and anger, it isn't going to change by us talking about who's right and who's wrong. You know, I keep asking myself, people of unity, why would we choose sides? Why aren't we praying? Why aren't we lifting people up? And why aren't we stopping our friends from talking about it? At least us. Last week in Jacksonville, 3 teens, ages 14 and 15, were arrested for plotting a school shooting. After all, we're tired of being bullied. They formed a group, named themselves United Boyopolis Socialist Republic. They created a logo, they made patches, and they distributed applications to recruit people to be on their group. Next, they were sending aerial pictures of the school and pictures of those that were to be injured and those that were to be killed. They had circled the faces of those who should be killed and had done a different thing for those who should be injured. So somebody in those discussions, when they saw them talking about bringing weapons to school, realized they were serious and decided that they were going to have to speak up. One human, one young teenager said, "This sounds really bad." And fortunately, the police were able to stop it. But if we're honest about this, The students who were bullied grew so resentful of being treated that way that they created their own society to live in. These are young people. Who are their models? Who taught them how? And I'm not talking about their parents. You cannot blame parents for everything their children do. You simply can't. But where are the adult influencers? When these kids were bullying, what were they told? What were the bullies told? What were the bullied told? You can imagine my fear when we received a text from Melody saying she was on lockdown Friday. You know, for a moment, my heart sank. But the next one said, I'm safe. It still didn't feel quite comforting after seeing what I do in our society. But I immediately went to believing what she said. She's safe, we're safe, it's all fine, someone's taking precaution. And that's what it turned out to be. On Friday, Gilda shared a beautifully written message as we were writing back and forth about how we can lift society at this time. And it's written by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola, who's an American poet, psychoanalyst, post-trauma recovery specialist. I want to read it to you before we go to our takeaways. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. And the last line of this says, if you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. Let's look at our lessons for today. Modeling civility for others requires us to first find ways to lift people up, avoiding shaming and minimizing. Choose responses versus reactions. Seek to diffuse, not to ignite. Number 3, eliminate gossiping and rumors. There is no value in sharing such information. And number 4, be inclusive and express compassion. Inclusivity and compassion will expand peace. The affirmation I wrote for today is, I am a positive example of civility. Let's say that together. I am a positive example of civility. And our quote today is perfect from Gary Stevenson. We have a primary responsibility to set a tone and be role models of kindness and inclusion and Christ-like behavior to the rising generation in what we say and how we act. Let's take that in for a moment. And so we pause now to give thanks for the opportunity to change our behaviors in any given moment, to know that we are empowered to show up in a way that will help and not hurt, lift and not divide. And so we affirm that as people who surround the unity concept, that we will focus on uniting. And so it is. Amen.